Destiny 3 rumors are starting to hit the internet, so a new Destiny might be coming sooner than you think. We scour the internet, forums, and message boards to see what exactly fans are thinking about when it comes to a new Destiny game. So today on gameranx, here are 10 things we don't want to see in Destiny 3. Starting off with number 10, Bungie has been adding new subclasses to Destiny that have been making them controlled differently enough, and I think most of us can agree on that. But I think that with Destiny 3, it's finally time to add a new class. Nothing against the Titans, Warlocks, and Hunters, but after playing as them for the past 2 entries in the series, I think it's time for something else. Lore-wise, I don't know how this would work, because by now we would have obviously heard of a different type of Guardian, and seeing that all 3 classes are represented in the Vanguard, it might be weird for one to show up all of a sudden. Maybe the threat in Destiny 3 is so big that a new type of Guardian just appears, maybe they're from another universe or something. I don't know, a lot of people just think that the roster needs a bit of a shake-up, myself included. And at number 9, I think this next one is a given, but most players really want to see the Eververse and microtransactions go. While the Eververse has gotten a bit better over time, it's still pretty annoying that it's even there. Now with bright engrams dropping more often and the whole prismatic matrix thing, you do get stuff quicker, but still. Now, being real here for a second, the chances it won't be in Destiny 3 is slim to none. Microtransactions are popping up more and more now, and this is also an Activision game, so you know that they're going to try and squeeze a few extra dollars out of you whenever they can. And moving on to number 8, the weapon types are starting to get a bit stale. Since the first Destiny, we've been using the same types of weapons. Now, Bungie has added different weapon types in the past. I mean, look at the swords. Those are really cool. It felt different because it wasn't a gun, and getting right up in an enemy's face was kind of exciting. Then we have the bow, which is still one of my go-to weapons since Forsaken, and the bow just felt different enough where I just got excited anytime I got to use it because it was different, and it also just feels really good to use. Bungie has shown us that they can pull off different weapon types. I mean, just look at a fusion rifle. Yeah, it's essentially an energy shotgun, but it's still a different weapon type than you would see in most games, and fusion rifles are really good weapons. So Bungie, maybe just give us more weapon types, just change it up a little bit. Next up on number 7, we have to talk about this 6v6 thing. Players wanted 6v6 in Crucible, a lot of players asked for it, and Bungie did give it to us. They gave us what we wanted, but the maps are definitely way too small for 6v6. Destiny 2 launched with 4v4, so all of the maps are built for exactly that. It honestly makes Crucible a little too hectic adding those 4 extra players, so for Destiny 3 there definitely has to be some sort of change made. Hopefully 6v6 will stay, and Bungie will design maps with that player count in mind. We don't not want 6v6, we just want it done the right way. Moving on to number 6, one of the biggest issues I had and a lot of other players had with Destiny 2 was the fact that we didn't get any new enemy factions, and honestly the same can be said for about any expansion from Destiny 1 and 2. We've been fighting the Cabal, Fallen, Hive, and Vex since the first game. Then we got the Taken in the Taken King, but they're just reskinned enemies from the other 4 factions. Now, yes, those factions have gotten different enemy types, probably the biggest with Forsaken. All those new enemies are still Fallen though. They might look and act differently, but they're still Fallen. And in the Warmind expansion, we were supposedly getting a brand new enemy faction, but it just ended up being like really cold Hive, so not really new. At the end of the Destiny 2 campaign though, they did tease a new enemy type, but we still haven't seen them pop up. Hopefully in Destiny 3, these mystery aliens actually end up being a brand new enemy faction, because I honestly don't know how long I could go just killing the same enemies. And at number 5, this is something we've been seeing a lot on forums since the release of Vanilla Destiny 2, and that's the fact that Bungie reuses a lot of older exotics from the previous game, even in their expansions. Yeah, there are a good amount of new ones too, but a lot of players think that there should be less older ones. And a lot don't like the fact that older ones are released with expansions because expansions should be all new stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love them still able to use the Mida multi-tool and the Sleeper Simulant, but I would also like to see some more brand new exotics. Then you get weapons like the Whisper of the Worm, which is pretty much a reworked Black Spindle, which is really cool. Now don't get me wrong, most of older exotics are reworked in some way, but nothing is the DPS beast that is the Worm. Speaking of exotics, let's move on to the next point. At number 4, Destiny 3 needs more exotics to actually feel exotic. Now I will say that Forsaken really started to do this. I mean, just look at the 1000 Voices, and it's, and I quote, giant continuous beam of death. That sounds pretty exotic. They're taking steps in the right direction for sure, but besides that and some other exceptions, some exotics can feel quite lackluster. Guns like the Gallowhorn, Bad Juju, and Thorn just aren't a thing anymore. I think the exotic armor is what really needs to be looked at, not to say that there aren't good pieces of exotic armor, because there are, but a lot of the perks on them don't come off as exotic perks. I don't know, maybe this is me and the rest of the internet just being a little too picky, who knows. And moving on to number 3, one thing I see a lot of people not like about Destiny is how hard it can be to get into after beating the campaign. Grinding is the name of the game once the campaign is done, and for a lot of people, grinding isn't really an issue, but sometimes with Destiny, it can get a little ridiculous. Some people won't be able to play enough to have pretty much unlimited legendary shards or materials, and not everyone plays with friends, which makes raiding pretty hard, and exotic weapon quests like the Whisper of the Worm, which you really can't do on your own, seem so far out of reach, and that player will never get that weapon, which is a bummer. Then of course there's also the fact that you're running the same stuff over and over again, which for some players is just super boring. While I'm totally fine with how Destiny plays and I still have a good time playing it, I totally get not being able to really get into it because of stuff like this. The game isn't that easily accessible. But moving on to number 2, I know we were just talking about how we don't want the game to remain too hard to get into for new players, but now to play devil's advocate a little bit, there are a ton of players who don't want the game to become more easily accessible, but instead want it to remain super grindy and true to the current player base. Now, you don't have to remain super grindy to remain true to the player base, but give us more ways to really dial in our Guardians, like go heavier into the RPG mechanics. Give us more crazy convoluted exotic weapon quests. While opening the series up to new players makes sense, it's just hard to not think about the players that have been playing since day one. The fans that don't just shit talk the game on the internet but instead dump hours into the game. Those people want Bungie to remain true to them, and I think I understand where they're coming from. And finally, at number 1, this next one might sound a little weird, but just stick with me here. What if we just didn't get Destiny 3? What if we never had Destiny 2? What if Destiny was just Destiny, and that's it? What if instead of releasing numbered sequels, Bungie just kept updating Destiny with big Forsaken-like expansions every so often, with smaller expansions being added throughout the year? And with Forsaken, Bungie has already shown us that they can somewhat overhaul how some of their mechanics work and make it feel different without totally alienating fans. Imagine you still had access to Destiny 1 content. Imagine you could still run Vault of Glass or even still rock Fatebringer. Destiny 1 was at its strongest once Taken King came out. There had been so many changes made, it felt fresh and fun again, and then when Destiny 2 came out, it almost felt like they were starting over, and that Bungie didn't actually give us the game they wanted to give us until Forsaken came out. I don't know, I just feel like Destiny 3 will start all over again, and then it won't be as amazing as it could be until it's Forsaken or Taken King-like expansion releases sometime down the road. I know Bungie is owned by Activision, and they love sequels and annual releases, but hey, we can dream, right? And those are 10 things we don't want to see in Destiny 3, but we want to hear from you, so meet us down in the comments and let us know what you think. How do you feel about there not being any more Destiny sequels? And how do you feel about the exotic weapons that we have so far in Destiny 2? As I'm sure you already know, don't forget to hit that like button, it really helps us out, and if you're new here for some reason, consider subscribing because we put up videos like this every single day. As always, thank you for stopping by to hang out with us, we really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time right here on gameranx.